Greetings, R. Frederick Riddle here with another Christian News and Views, and this is episode 81. And today we're going to be looking at two subjects. One involves the Ukraine, the other one involves DOGE. So let me get started here. The first article here that I want to talk about is there we go. Right here. So let's bring that over to the middle there. Okay, there we go. And officials should hold talks on ending war without Kiev. And so this article is talking about a move. Now, if you remember, in the past, I've talked about that I felt that the President Trump would have a surprise that Putin couldn't refuse. Now, when I said that, this is not what I had in mind, but upon consideration of what's going on, I'm wondering if this is not that surprise. It's a surprise to us, but I think it's a surprise to Putin. What has been going on for the previous 4 years has been an attempt to isolate Russia and defeat him that way. And that's had some marginal successes. In spite of the slow walking that the Biden administration did, they couldn't make up their mind whether they wanted the Ukraine to win or not. And so they would promise them weapons and so forth, and they would ship them once they got them approved, but they slow walked them. They got there really late, usually after Ukraine had been pushed back. And I mean, you got to remember, Russia has a lot of troops, a lot more than Ukraine does. And so Ukraine has to move their troops around a little bit to be able to counter all these different probes and attacks that Russia makes. And so they need the best equipment they can get. And then they take that equipment and they adjust it, fix it, tweak it so that it blends in and works within that country, in the geography of that country. And so, and they've done that rather well. So this is a different look. This looks like it's a different thing. So let me get into it. It says here, senior American and Russian officials, including the top diplomats, will hold talks on improving their ties and negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine, officials said Monday. In what would be the most significant meeting between the sides since Moscow's full-scale invasion of its neighbor nearly 3 years ago. An invasion they thought was only going to take hours or days at the most, now 3 years old, or almost 3 years old. So this is going to be scheduled for today, actually, in Saudi Arabia. And it's going to be what they call another pivotal step by the Trump administration to reverse U.S. policy on isolating Russia, and are meant to pave the way for a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And so there's different people are involved in this. And go over here to where here we are. So just go ID or I emphasize a few things that are in the article. It says here that Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the talks will be primarily focused on restoring the entire range of U.S.-Russian relations, as well as preparing possible talks on the Ukrainian settlement and organizing a meeting of the two presidents. So this is something that is going forward. Obviously, starting today. This report here was partly by the Kremlin spokesman, but also by Tammy. I saw her name here, Bruce, and she's the one doing most of the talking here. She's a spokesperson for the government. So the State Department. Tammy Bruce, that's her name, yes. And she goes on to say, I think the goal, obviously, for everyone is to determine if this is something that can move forward. Bruce said that even though Ukraine would not be at the table for today's talks, actual peace negotiations would only take place with Ukraine's involvement. Kiev's participation in any peace talks was a bedrock of U.S. policy under Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden. So it goes on here. It's going to expand. The talks would mark a significant expansion of U.S.-Russian contacts nearly 3 years into the war. And then down here at the end it says this. Tuesday's talks follow a telephone call between Trump and Putin in which the American president said they agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately. And so this is something that is totally different than what we're used to. And so we got to look at this in that light. This is not the surprise I was expecting. I said that earlier. But it is a surprise. And it appears that this diplomatic effort has at least two parts to it. Part one is a restoration of U.S.-Russian relations. Instead of isolating Russia, the new effort appears to rest on diplomacy. Now, I'm not a fan of diplomacy. It is a nice word that promises peaceful negotiations. However, it often results in the good guy, that's us, losing to the bad guy, that's them. That said, I believe that President Trump is very aware of the pitfalls and is confident in his abilities. I am also confident that if anyone can make it work, Donald Trump is the man. Now we come to part two. It is also apparent that eventually Kiev must be included. According to what I read earlier, it says this. Actual peace negotiations would only take place with Ukraine's involvement. So my take on this whole thing is that, first of all, under Biden, they tried the policy of isolation. It has had some success, and it could have been far more successful if the Biden administration had really been faithful in all that they did. I don't believe they were. Many people focus on the fact that millions of dollars of equipment was sent to Kiev, and that is true. But what they don't acknowledge, or maybe they don't even know about it, I don't know. I don't know how well they research things. But I believe that the Biden administration, and I've said this over and over again, they slow-walked everything. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is they went, if they needed congressional approval, they went and got it. And they got it for an economic package. An economic package is primarily military equipment. Now, a lot of people think we're sending them state-of-the-art equipment. That is not true. There may be some in there that is state-of-the-art, but most of it has been what in the Navy we called mothballs. And this is stuff, equipment that's been set aside, is protected, that's where the mothball bit comes in, so as not to rust away and all that. And it's in stock. It's in case we ever need it ourselves. Well, it's also there to give to or sell to other countries. And so what we do is, for instance, with Israel, we sell them equipment that has been dumbed down. So that we're selling them maybe state-of-the-art sometimes, but it's been dumbed down. The interesting thing about it, when Israel gets it, they then if you can dumb down, maybe you can smart up. and they make it smart again, and maybe even smarter than it was before it got dumbed down. Well, Ukraine has a way of doing that also, not necessarily the same way, but they can take the equipment that is not necessarily meant for the geography of the Ukraine, and they can tweak it here and there and make it adapted to their physical, their geographical situation. And it turns into be very highly effective, and they can reverse their fortunes and push the Russians back again, and sometimes even go regain everything they lost. But a lot of times they don't regain it at all. And it puts the Ukraine on a constant treadmill. And what this second part is that Trump is actually making a serious attempt at bringing a peaceful agreement. A peaceful agreement kind of usually, you've got to remember we're dealing with Russia here, and we're also dealing with Putin. But usually this kind of an agreement, a peaceful agreement, would be that both sides will be able to go back to their people and say, we got what we wanted. So Ukraine may have to give up some stuff, but maybe they get some assurances and some protections that they didn't have before. On the other hand, Russia will give up stuff. Now the thing is, some of the things here that was in this article, there are those who don't believe that Ukraine should get into NATO. I'm not one of them. I think that they do need to be in NATO, and I hope that the European Union and that they stick to their guns and insist that there be a route to getting Ukraine in, because Ukraine cannot stand by itself. If you make a treaty and say, okay, the United States is going to back them up, that puts a different spin on it, but I don't know that Donald Trump would do that, because it puts the United States as a guarantor, which means that they could be drawn in a future war, and I don't think he wants that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I think that the change or the shift of tactics is probably necessary, mostly because the Biden administration missed their opportunity. The policy they had in place could have worked, but they were so afraid, and I'm not sure they were ever committed to Ukraine winning the war. I think they wanted primarily a stalemate. Well, that war has expanded, and it now includes NATO countries. They're not there, but they're providing weapons and so forth and training so that the Ukrainians can fight and win. And so there's going to be some give and take here. Trump is a very powerful man, a very convincing man. He's got, in America, has a lot of power. And so, but at the same time, the Europeans have been forced by this war to draw closer together, be more united and things of this nature. And so the playing field is not quite the same as it was when Trump was in charge the first time around. And so all this is going to be very interesting to watch and to see how things play out. We're going to see, I think, we're going to see President Trump at his best. But you're also going to see the European countries taking a stand, because they are the ones on the front line here. We have a whole ocean separating us from Ukraine. And so, but they're right there. Some of them are right there. Like, they may not be part of the of NATO, but they are, like Poland and Germany. Oh, Germany's part of the of NATO, and so you have all these countries around the area there that could be impacted. If you have a madman in control and only inches away from a red button that would set off a nuclear war, that is not something that you can feel comfortable about. And so they're going to want some assurances. They're going to want to make sure that any kind of agreement that Russia agrees to, that they will honor it. And to be perfectly honest, and I would say this to Trump and to all of his advisors, this man, Putin, has not honored Russian agreements that were made in the past. And so, what's that mean? How's that going to play out? They need to consider that and come up with some ways in which they can guard against this ever happening again. But I'm going to take a wait and see attitude for now. This has risks, but also great reward. It is worth the wait. Now we move on to another article. It's on the other page here, actually. And this is about DOGE. There's different ways of pronouncing that word I found out. DOGE is one of them. I think another one is Doge, doggy, or doggy, and doggy, and doggy, and all that. So obviously people are still playing with that one, but the most popular way of pronouncing it is DOGE. And so I'm going to read you, the headline says, DOGE seeks access to taxpayer data, IRS. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole article here. I do want to read a little bit here. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is seeking access to troves of sensitive taxpayer data at the IRS. Two people familiar with the inner workings of the plan who were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly told the Associated Press on Monday. If successful, Musk and his group would have access to millions of tightly controlled files that include taxpayer information, bank records, and other sensitive records. The people who spoke to the AP and requested anonymity said DOGE is specifically seeking to access the IRS integrated data retrieval system, which enables employees to have instantaneous visual access to certain taxpayer accounts, according to the IRS website. And I'm going to get into advocates that fear this. And before I do, let me point out, we're talking about the Associated Press again, so I don't know how much of this we can actually rely upon as far as truth is concerned. So just take this as a grain of salt. They just don't have the reputation they once had. Advocates fear that the potential unlawful release of taxpayer records could be used to maliciously target Americans, violate their privacy, and create other ramifications. And so it says Harrison Fields, a White House spokesman, said in an email statement that waste, fraud, and abuse have been deeply entrenched in our broken system for far too long. It takes direct access to the system to identify and fix it. DOGE will continue to shine a light on the fraud they uncover, as the American people deserve to know what their government has been spending their hard-earned tax dollars on. That statement I totally agree with. So I think the courts have already gotten involved in this, even before we got to this stage. And so that's got to play out as well. And more court action may be coming in the future. So while I support the DOGE mandate to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm going to be watching this closely. It's closely also related to the mass firings that just recently took place. It is my hope that DOGE or the White House will quickly develop a soft landing for those people who were caught up in the mass firings. A lot of the people who are being fired should never have been hired in the first place, because the Democrats love big government, and so it became a major employer, if you will. And some of these people who are being fired or have been fired just seem to be normal people who have been just doing their job. Some of them are going to accept the retirement package that was offered. And so I think while this is all necessary, the house cleaning is necessary, maybe the government needs to look at ways of providing a financial parachute, so to speak, for those people who were inadvertently caught up in this whole thing. It's always a mess when you're trying to clean up. um, I was going to say clean up somebody else's mess. So let me rephrase that. It's always difficult. It always requires a great deal of work to clean up somebody else's mess. The Democrats have made a mess of government. And we have all these people working there who really, the jobs that they're doing, many of them probably should be done away with or consolidated. It's just a mess. And so this has to be done simply because of that. The departments themselves are so overburdened. People, they're either unwilling or incapable of cleaning their own house. So this has to be done. But I think that we need to approach it with a little bit of mercy, a little bit of kindness and consideration. There's going to be people caught up in this. When it's this big of a thing, there are going to be people who are going to be caught up in it who did nothing wrong. They were just there and they got caught up in it. And I would hope that they would develop some kind of a program to ease it, make it, like I said earlier, a soft landing, a financial parachute, so to speak. Not a golden one, but a financial one. And make it possible for them to land on their feet. I think that that would be a good thing to do. But I'm not there. I don't know all the details of what's going on and the people. You have to depend on the paper to some extent, and you don't always get the facts. You get the facts they want you to get and nothing more. And so, again, I'm not copping out, mind you, but I want to sit back and wait a little bit before I pass my own verdict on this, because I want to see how things work out. I see the need, but I also see the impact that solving that need is having. And so, as they start working these things all out, I'm sure there's going to be some tweaks here and there, and they're going to make things a little bit more efficient. They're going to make it would be good if if DOGE, which is about government efficiency, would actually itself become a little bit more efficient and not so broad in its solutions. Initially, I think that broad approach probably had to be done, but they have to narrow it down, and they have to look for those people who were innocent. What little I know about Musk is that he's a man who does care. You don't see that in the papers much. Then that's not something they want you to know about him. But from what little access I have to anything about him, he is a billionaire, but he is a billionaire with a heart, if you will. And I think that so we got to get him some time, and just to see how things work out. So hopefully you like this channel. You like hearing what I say and how I express myself. I'm just a common person speaking to you sort of like this. Instead of down to you like you so often are used to getting, I'm trying to speak out to you this way. My opinion is just that, my opinion. Yes, I'm trying to influence you. But that's okay, because you're an intelligent person and you have the right to reject or accept. And I'm interested in your opinions. I'm interested in your thoughts. And so I hope and pray that you will subscribe to my channel. And you can do that right down below here. Subscribe. You can also follow me. And when you do, that gives you access to, I got 2 podcasts right now. Christian News and Views, which you're watching, and Becoming a Published Author is Fun, which is for those who want to write, those who want to be authors. As I provide them with free information they can use right now to enable them to be a published author. But there's another thing that happens when you subscribe. When you subscribe, you encourage me. So I encourage you to subscribe, and with all my power to create episodes that will inform, encourage, and inspire you. Now, that's my little advertisement. Could be why? Because this whole podcast and the other one in itself is sponsored by Basic Authors Training, which is a writing course, and Ministry Publishing, which is a publishing package aimed at Christians who are active in their church. I don't care if you push a broom, you sing choir, you preach a sermon, you teach a lesson, work in the office. I don't care what you do as long as you're doing something, not just sitting in the pew. And so if you're active in your church in any fashion, then I encourage, and you have a book that maybe you've already worked at, maybe you've got it all done, ready to go, and it's ready to be published. I'm interested in publishing your book. Maybe you're well on it. You've got it plotted in your mind and everything, and you're putting it down on paper. I can provide some coaching on that. I can provide some teaching on that, as well as the publishing itself. And I want to work with you. I want to see you get published. And so that is what sponsors these podcasts. So hopefully this has been interesting. If take on the news, it is my take. It's from a Christian worldview take, and I think that it is a take that probably most of you share to some extent yourselves. And so I just hope that this has been helpful to you. And now I will see you in the next episode.